Okay, year two. So today we're going to paint this watercolour painting, and we're going to use 4 different watercolour techniques. Some of them you've tried before and some of them are new. Now, to do this you will need the following equipment. You'll need water, you'll need a medium thick and a fine paintbrush, you'll need an oil pastel or a black crayon, a pencil, some salt and your watercolours, and you'll also need your sketchbook, of course. Now if you are working from school, you will also be using these, which are drawing inks, and they're a little bit like watercolours, but you can see that they are much more liquid than the watercolours, and they have very lovely bright colours, and we're going to use them for the detail on our leaves. Okay, so let's get started. Now you will turn to the next clean page in your sketchbook. I, for now, am going to use paper just because it's easier to demonstrate what to do. Okay, and on the Firefly page, you will find this picture to give you some ideas of what leaves you might want to draw. Okay, so looking at the autumn colours, so using reds, greens, yellows, purpley, oranges. Okay, now the other thing I forgot to mention is that you'll need a black marker pen. So we're going to try out 4 different techniques. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide my paper into 3. So I'm going to divide it in half at the top and once here. And I'm going to draw a leaf in each of these sections. And I'm going to start by doing a leaf, sort of a ragged leaf, a bit like this. Okay, so I'm going to do that at the bottom of the page. And I'm going to draw the stem in the corner. Oh, in fact, no, I'm going to take my black marker pen, because the first technique I'm going to do is what we call marker pen and watercolour. And so we're going to draw the leaf onto our page, and it's just shape a bit like this. It has lots of large shapes like that, and then it has a line up the middle, and then I've got lots of little veins coming off the center of the leaf like this. Okay, and on those is a few more little veins as well, so I'm going to draw those on. And then I'm going to start thinking about the colour. Now I want this to be a yellowy, orangey, red colour. So I'm going to start off by mixing my colours, as we've already started to do, on the lid of the paint box. And I'm going to start by mixing red. I'm going to use the small fine brush because that's easier. So I'm going to start by mixing the red onto the box, and this just makes the colour more even. When you start to paint, if you've painted it onto the box, it makes the colour more even. Okay, so I'm going to paint most of it a reddy colour. Keep adding more paint when it starts to dry. Okay, keep going. A nice dark red. Keep mixing onto the palette. And then I think I'm going to start to add a yellowy colour. So I'm going to mix the yellow onto my palette. And then add some water. I'm going to start to mix some areas of yellow and then mix the 2 colours together. Okay, and it's up to you how you decide to mix those colours together. Need lots more paint on my brush, I think. So right into the corners. Now I'm not going to paint the whole leaf at this time. you can choose the colours you're going to use. And then what you may want to do is to add some orange highlights into the leaf. You might want to add some more yellow highlights just to give the leaf a little bit of variation in colour. And then if you are working at school, you're going to add some of the drawing inks. If you're at home, then you can continue to use the watercolours, and I'm just going to add the veins in the middle to make it just a little bit more interesting colour. I'm going to add some of the red as well, just to add a little bit of variety to the colours in the leaves, okay? If you're at home, of course, please continue to use the watercolour, but you can see that that gives it a nice flowing movement. So in this section, you will have painted black marker pen and watercolour. In the next section, either this one or this one, you can try out watercolour resist. Now wax resist or watercolour resist is when you use crayon or oil pastel. You draw the object, so I'm going to draw again another leaf. And this is my leaf shape. And then when you paint using the watercolour, the leaf section will, where you've used the crayon or the oil pastel, it won't be, the paint won't be able to get on into that space. So that's why we call it a resist, because the crayon resists the watercolour. Okay, so this leaf I'm going to do green. So again, I'm going to use my palette to mix the colours, adding water, adding paint. And I have two different green colours in my watercolour set, so I'm going to use both of those. Okay, I'm going to start off with the lighter green, and then I'm going to start to add some darker tints. So I'll start off painting right into the corners, right down to the end. And then as you paint, let me mix some more colour. So once you've painted using that green, you can mix up the other green. And you can start to add some highlights and some tones of different greens into your leaf, okay? It's up to you how you do that, okay? Now, I'm not going to again paint the whole leaf. I'm going to leave you to do that. But what I am going to do now is, children at home, you continue to use the watercolours. Children at school, you're going to add highlights using the drawing inks, and you're just going to highlight on the leaves, okay, to add a little bit more interesting colour. But at home, you can continue to use the watercolours. And let me show you. Yeah, there's my watercolour. Just adding detail to the leaf. Okay? Okay, so I've used black marker and watercolour. I've used wax resist. And I'm now going to use wet on wet. Now this is a technique we've used before. This is my last leaf. It's going to go in this section. And I'm going to draw the stem. And then I'm going to do long leaf sections like this. Quite raggedy. And then I'm going to do the stem goes right up the leaf. And then add some more veins into the leaf. And then I'm going to paint using mostly yellow again. So it's a yellow coloured leaf. I'm going to take my yellow, mix it on the palette. And then I'm going to paint my leaf, mostly yellow, all over. And then once you've painted your leaf yellow all over, what you might want to do is add some orangey colour to add some highlights around the edges. You might want to add a browny colour. It's up to you how you mix the colours, okay? Now I'm not going to finish that. You can continue to mix the colours to paint your leaf. Okay, I'm just going to do that one side. And then we're going to use the drawing inks if you're at school to do some highlights, or continue to do highlights at home with your watercolours. Okay, so that was dry. That was wet on dry, because we use wet paint on the dry paper. Okay, now the last technique we use is called salting, and this is where we actually pour a little bit of salt onto our watercolour, and we're going to use this for the background. Now if you are at home, you are going to do the background using wet on wet. So what you will do is you will wet the paper, a little bit of the paper at a time, then paint it, and I suggest you do a blue colour. Paint it. I'm going to use a bit from my palette as well. Paint the paper, and then you're going to take a little bit of salt in your hand, so I've got too much there, and just place it, sprinkle it onto the paper and shake it off, and it creates a lovely effect in your paint. If you are at school, what you're going to do is you're going to use the drawing inks, the blue drawing inks, to create the background. And you're just going to paint in one direction, and once you've painted a small section, again you're going to sprinkle it with salt, and you can see it's creating a lovely bubbly texture in the paint, and we call this salting when we are using it in our artwork. Okay, so lovely bubbled section. And then we're going to continue to paint the background this blue colour. Okay, so whether you're using watercolours or drawing ink, either will work. Okay, so I'm going to leave you to continue that and to finish it off, year 2. Good luck and well done. See you later.